The night I finally said something, I was standing at the kitchen sink at 11:30, scrubbing a pot that had been sitting there since dinner. A dinner I had also cooked, by the way, after coming home from a full 8-hour shift. My stepsisters were in the living room. I could hear them laughing at something on TV. My stepmom was in her bedroom with the door closed. My dad had gone to bed early, which he always did when he sensed the tension in the house getting to a certain level. I stood there with my hands in hot water, watching the grease swirl down the drain, and I thought, I have done this every single night for 2 years. Every single night. And nobody has ever once asked if I needed help. I am 27 years old. I moved back home after my lease ended and the apartment I had lined up fell through. It was supposed to be temporary. 3 months, maybe 4, just until I got back on my feet financially. My dad said, of course, the door is always open. My stepmom smiled and said we would figure it out together. What we figured out, apparently, was that I would become the household's unpaid domestic staff. It did not happen all at once. That is the thing about these situations. They never do. It starts small. You cook dinner one night because nobody else did, and you are hungry. You do a load of laundry because the machine is sitting there empty. You wipe down the bathroom counter because it is bothering you and it takes 30 seconds. Then one day you realize you have been doing all of it, every day, for months, and nobody has even noticed because to them it is just the way things are now. My stepsisters are 22 and 19. I will call them what they are. Adults, or close enough. The older one works part-time at a clothing boutique downtown. The younger one is in her first year of community college and spends most of her time in her room on her phone. Neither of them has ever, not once in the 2 years I have lived in that house, cooked a meal, cleaned a bathroom, vacuumed a floor, or taken out the trash without being explicitly asked 3 times first. I know, because I kept track, not obsessively, not at first. But after a certain point you start noticing. A Thursday in October was when something in me finally shifted. I had worked an extra 3 hours that day covering for a coworker. I came home at 6:30 to find the sink full of dishes from lunch. Lunch I had not eaten. Lunch nobody had thought to clean up after. The living room had a blanket thrown across the couch, 2 cups on the coffee table, a bag of chips left open on the floor. My stepmom walked past me on her way to the kitchen, looked at the mess and said, "Can you get to that tonight? I've got a headache." I said, "Sure." I always said sure. That was the problem. That night, after I cleaned up and made dinner and washed the dinner dishes and wiped down the stove, I sat on the edge of my bed and asked myself a question I had been avoiding for a long time. Why am I doing this? Not rhetorically, genuinely. What was I getting in exchange for running this household? I was paying $300 a month in rent, which my dad had insisted on even when I offered more, so that was not nothing. But $300 a month does not cover cook, cleaner, errand runner, and general household manager in any city in this country. I had looked it up once, half joking. The average cost of a part-time housekeeper in our area was between $15 and $20 an hour. I was easily putting in 10 to 12 hours a week. That is over $600 a month in unpaid labor conservatively. But it was not even the money, it was the assumption. The complete, unchallenged assumption that this was just my role now. That because I was the oldest, because I was responsible, because I had always been the one who kept things together, this was simply what I did. My stepmom had mentioned once early on that it would be nice if we all contributed around the house. I had nodded. My stepsisters had also nodded. Then nothing changed, and somehow the nodding had been interpreted as a commitment only I had made. My dad, and I love my dad. I want to be clear about that. I love him, and that is part of why this was so hard. My dad has a way of smoothing things over by not acknowledging them. He grew up in a household where conflict was avoided at all costs, and he brought that into every relationship he has ever had. If I brought something up, he would listen carefully, then say something like, "I'll talk to them," and then not talk to them, or talk to them in a way so gentle it registered as nothing, and then come back and tell me things would get better. Things did not get better. The conversation I had been avoiding happened on a Sunday in November. My stepmom asked me at breakfast if I could do the grocery run that afternoon because she had plans, and also could I pick up her dry cleaning on the way back, and also the bathrooms needed to be done this week. I looked at her. I looked at my stepsisters sitting at the table eating the eggs I had scrambled. I said, I have plans today too. It came out quieter than I intended, but it landed. My stepmom looked up. What plans? Just things I need to do, I said. But I was wondering, can one of them do the grocery run? Or the dry cleaning? I can write a list. The silence that followed was the kind that has texture. My stepsisters both looked at their plates. My stepmom set down her coffee cup. They don't really know where everything is, she said. They could learn, I said. I did. You're just better at this stuff. And there it was. The thing that gets said in 100 different ways in situations like this. You're better at it. You don't mind. You've always been so capable. As if competence is a reason to be taken advantage of, as if being good at something means you volunteered to do it forever for free. I'm not better at it, I said. I just do it because no one else does. My stepmom's expression shifted into something I recognized. The beginning of a conversation where I would be told I was being sensitive. I had seen it before. I knew the shape of what was coming. She said, I don't think that's entirely fair. Which part? We all contribute here. This family works as a team. I almost laughed. I did not laugh, but it was close. Can you tell me, I said carefully, the last time either of them cooked dinner or cleaned a bathroom or did any grocery shopping? Nobody answered. My younger stepsister looked at her phone. The older one got up and put her plate in the sink, unwashed, and said she had somewhere to be. My stepmom looked at me and said, I don't know why you're making this into something. I'm not making it into something, I said. It already is something, I'm just saying it out loud. She told me I had a chip on my shoulder. She told me that living here was a privilege and that I needed to think about what I was contributing to the household dynamic. She said that she had always tried to make me feel welcome and that this felt like an attack. I did not argue. I had learned a long time ago that arguing in that moment does nothing. So I nodded and I finished my coffee and I went to my room. But something had changed. Something had been said that could not be unsaid. And more importantly, I had heard myself say it, and I had not dissolved. I had not backed down. I had not said, you're right, I'm sorry, I'll do better. And that felt like something. I spent that Sunday afternoon not doing the grocery run. I stayed in my room and I looked at apartment listings. I had been looking casually for a while, but that afternoon I looked seriously. I had about $4,000 saved. I had been careful with money, careful in the way you are when you have been financially uncertain before. Rent in our area for a one-bedroom was between $1,200 and $1,500 a month. First, last, and security deposit would wipe out most of my savings, and I would be tight for a few months. But tight was manageable. Tight I had done before. I texted a friend I had from my old neighborhood, someone I trusted, and asked if she knew anyone with a room or a reasonably priced one-bedroom. She called me back in 20 minutes. She knew someone moving out of a one-bedroom in a building she liked, decent neighborhood, heat included, $1,300 a month. The landlord was her aunt. Did I want her to put in a word? I said yes. I did not tell anyone at home what I was doing. I meant to see the apartment on a Tuesday after work. It was small, a real one-bedroom, meaning the bedroom barely fit a queen mattress, and the kitchen was galley style with about 3 feet of counter space, but it had good light and clean floors and a bathroom that was entirely mine. I filled out the application that night. I was approved 4 days later. I still had not said anything at home. I kept doing what I always did. I made dinner. I did the dishes. I wiped down the counters. I was not planning a dramatic exit. I was not trying to prove a point. I just needed to know I had somewhere to go before I said anything, because I had learned that if you give people a warning without a plan, they talk you out of it. I told my dad first on a Thursday evening, just the two of us. I said I had found a place and I would be moving out at the end of the month, about 2 weeks away. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Is this because of what happened at breakfast?" "It's because of a lot of things," I said. "But mostly because I need my own space. I've needed it for a while." He said he understood. He looked tired in a way that made me sad, because I knew he could see things more clearly than he had ever been willing to say. He told me he loved me. He asked if I needed help moving. I said I would let him know. That evening, my stepmom found out. She did not take it the same way. She said she was blindsided, that she had no idea I was unhappy, that I should have communicated better. I wanted to say, I did communicate on a Sunday in November at the breakfast table in front of everyone. "You told me I had a chip on my shoulder." But I did not say that. I just said this was something I needed to do for myself, and I was grateful for the time I had stayed there. She said, "Who's going to handle things around here?" I did not answer that question because it was not my question to answer. Moving day was a Saturday. I had rented a small truck and asked 2 friends to help. We were done in 4 hours. My stepsisters were home the whole time. I heard them in their rooms. My stepmom was out. My dad carried one box to the truck and then stood on the front porch with his hands in his pockets while he loaded everything else. When I hugged him goodbye, he said quietly, near my ear, "I'm sorry it got to this." I said, "Me too." That was all. It was enough. The first night in my apartment, I made pasta with whatever I had in a bag of groceries I had picked up on the way. I ate it standing at my galley counter because I did not have a table yet. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt enormous. My phone was on the counter face down. I turned it over and saw 6 texts and 2 missed calls, all from my stepmom's number. I read the texts. They said things like, "We need to talk, and I think you overreacted, and this is affecting the whole household." I put the phone back down, face down. I finished my pasta. I washed the one pot and the one bowl I had used. I put them away in my one cabinet. Then I went and sat on my mattress on the floor. I did not have a bed frame yet either. And I looked at the ceiling of my own apartment, and I felt something I had not felt in 2 years. Nothing was required of me tonight. Nothing was waiting. No dishes in someone else's sink. No grocery list on the counter. No quiet expectation hanging in the air like a smell. Just me, and this room, and the sound of the building settling. I did not block my stepmom's number that night. I want to be honest about that. I thought about it, and I chose not to, not because I wanted to keep the door open for conflict, but because I was not afraid of her texts anymore. There is a difference between blocking someone because you cannot handle hearing from them and simply choosing not to respond. I chose not to respond. Over the next week, the calls continued for a few days and then tapered off. My stepsisters never called or texted, which did not surprise me. My dad called twice. I called him back both times. We talked about regular things. He told me about a project at work. I told him about a coffee shop I liked near my new place. He did not bring up the house. I think he was relieved. In some way, he could not say directly that I had gotten out. About 2 weeks after I moved, he mentioned in passing that my stepmom had started asking the girls to help with dinner. I did not say anything in response. I just said, "That's good." Because it was good. Not as a victory, not as proof of anything, but because it was how it should have been all along. What I know now, 2 months into living alone, is that I could have had a much harder conversation much sooner, and it might have changed things. Or it might not have. People who are comfortable with an arrangement rarely change it voluntarily. That is just true, and I have stopped being angry at myself for not seeing it sooner. I was doing what I had always done, keeping things together, keeping the peace, assuming that if I just held on a little longer, things would even out naturally. They do not even out naturally. You have to even them out yourself. My apartment still does not have a proper dining table. I eat at my counter or on my couch. The bathroom is always clean because I clean it when I feel like it, on my own timeline for my own reasons. There is no one waiting for me to do anything. Some nights I come home from work and I sit on my couch in the quiet and I think about the version of me that was standing at a sink at 11:30, scrubbing someone else's pot, telling herself it was fine. I do not miss that, not even a little. What I miss is the version of my relationship with my dad that I thought we had. The one where he would have stepped in before it got to this. But I am learning that you can love someone clearly without the version of them you wish they were. He is who he is. I am who I am. And we are figuring out what that looks like without a household full of unspoken obligations sitting between us. Last weekend, he came to see my apartment for the first time. He stood in the middle of my small living room and looked around at everything. The second-hand bookshelf I had found on Facebook Marketplace, the two plants I had already managed not to kill, the coffee table I had assembled myself on a Friday night with a YouTube tutorial and a glass of wine. He said, "You've made it really nice." I said, "Thank you, I like it here." He nodded, and I could see something in his face that was not quite pride and not quite grief, but something in between, like he was finally seeing something he should have seen a long time ago. We had coffee and talked for an hour. It was the most comfortable we had been together in years. I think that is what I want, going forward. Not to undo what happened, not to relitigate it, not to wait for an apology that may or may not ever fully come. Just this, my own silence. A relationship with my father that is honest, because there is nothing between us anymore that I am quietly resenting. I have been steady my whole life, steady and capable, and the one who handles things. I do not think I need to stop being those things. I just needed to stop offering them for free to people who never thought to ask whether I was okay. I am okay. More than okay, I am, for the first time in a long time, genuinely fine. There is something I keep coming back to even now. 2 months into living alone in an apartment with no dining table and two plants, I somehow have not killed yet. The hardest part was not the work. I could do the work. I had been doing the work for 2 years. The hardest part was believing, for most of those 2 years, that if I just kept going, just kept being steady and capable and the one who holds things together, the situation would eventually correct itself. That people would notice. That fairness would find its way in naturally. It does not. I know that now. And knowing it is not bitter. It is just true, the way a lot of true things are quiet and plain once you finally see them. What I understand now is that there are 3 things that actually got me out of that house, and none of them were luck. The first was that I had been honest with myself even when I was not yet honest out loud. I knew, somewhere underneath the habit of compliance, that what was happening was wrong. Not dramatic, wrong, not crisis wrong, just quietly, persistently wrong. The kind of wrong that erodes you slowly. That inner honesty, that refusal to fully convince myself it was fine, was the thing that kept me from going completely numb. Doing right by yourself starts with being willing to name what is actually happening, even if you only name it in your own head at first. The second was that I did not act on emotion. When my stepmom told me I had a chip on my shoulder, I wanted to say everything at once. I did not. I waited. I spent that Sunday looking at apartment listings, not making speeches. I saved money carefully, not impulsively. I applied, got approved, and had a signed lease before I told anyone. That is not coldness, that is clarity. Thinking before you move is not weakness, it is the thing that makes the move stick. The third was simply not stopping. Not stopping when the situation was uncomfortable. Not stopping when my dad smoothed things over for the 100th time and nothing changed. Not stopping when I thought about the deposit, the tight months ahead, the risk of it all. I have been steady my whole life, and I had spent years directing that steadiness outward toward other people's comfort. What changed was pointing it inward, toward my own life, toward the apartment I now sit in, quietly, on my own timeline, with nobody waiting for me to do anything. My dad came to see the place last weekend. He stood in my living room and looked at the bookshelf I found on Marketplace, the coffee table I put together myself, the plants. He said I had made it really nice. I said I liked it here. And that was enough. Not a resolution. Not a fixed family. Not a full apology. Just a quiet hour with my father in a space that is entirely mine, built from choices I made carefully, honestly, without giving up. That is the only kind of ending that holds.